So, welcome. Look, I know the coffee break's hanging up, so I will endeavour to make this as interesting as I can for you. Just while that's up there, that sounded like a lot of stuff that was going on with what I've done. I usually work in the business area, but when I'm helping business people, whether they're executives, business owners, entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs actually become clear, I can't do that without helping them sort out some of their personal issues. Is there anyone in this room that's a life coach? Bugger, that's some of my best material I can't use. It's a shame. The reason I ask that is that unfortunately the term coach, which to me means a carriage with four wheels and a horse in front that takes people for a ride, has become a poison term for people like me. You talk about being a business coach or a life coach and people's eyes roll back in the back of their head and they want to move on from things. But it's impossible to fix a business without trying to address some of the personal issues. The Clarity Code is essentially a framework which works in businesses, doesn't matter what size, what type, doesn't matter whether you actually work in the business, whether you own the business, or whether you just apply it to your personal life. It's transportable across all three. So it's a framework. So we'll get to that. L cubed. This is the real driving force for me is I believe every single one of us needs to be living a larger life. And what a larger life is depends on you. I've got a client for whom a larger life is he wants a yacht in the Greek islands. Seriously, and that's what he's working towards. We've worked it out. That's going to cost him round about $45 million for the first 2 years. But that's what he wants to do. For me, living a larger life means that I can go into any restaurant anywhere in the world and not look at the prices on the menu. I'm a long way away from that, just quietly, but that's for me. So for each one of us, it's different. Whatever you want to do, living a larger life, whatever your L cube is different. How many people agree with that? Yep. But the funny thing is, we all agree with that, yet most people just work hard enough to keep their job and just to earn enough money not to quit. It's almost like there is a password, a code, a secret message or something that's buried out there that keeps us doing that keeps us, if we're working for someone, we're really not fulfilled or happy, but we stay because it's too difficult. If we start a business, we've done it because it might be something we love, passionate about, but it's something people are willing to pay us for. You've heard some amazing stories this morning about where people have had that still point in their life where they've had to make a decision one way or another. In some ways, they found the password for themselves. Now, the idea of us operating on a software system, if you like, is not new. There's lots of people who've written about that. But what I'm going to be talking about is what I call living codes. A code for the purposes of this talk isn't a software code, it isn't necessarily an area code, it's not a police code. You know, you see when the movies go code 4, everything's all right. Code 2 is a problem. Code 1, I'm in real shit. None of that's going to happen. But for us here, a code is nothing more than a set of rules, written or spoken, implicit or explicit, that governs the way people act or are expected to act. And if you think about it, everything we do and how we react, what we achieve, is governed by one or more of these codes. And codes are really nothing more than rules and habits. Now, you've heard Warren mention before about getting good habits. You heard Tori talking about developing healthy habits, and you heard Simon talking about developing healthy self-talk habits. Habits are a really, really important thing. This is what happens with most of us in our working lives, whether we own a business or we work for someone else. We're like a top. We've got a lot of equilibrium for a while, but we start wobbling, and when we wobble, we fall over. I want to tell you a story about my son. This is my son, Michael. Michael is 17. He's just got his licence. So, Dad, can I borrow the car is something I'm hearing every 5 minutes at home. But at age 17, Michael is the same size as me. I'm 6'3". I weigh about 117 kilos. Too much, but nonetheless, he's not 117 kilos, but he's a tall, broad-shouldered, good-looking guy, as you can see. But this is the Michael I want to talk to you about, one from 10 years ago. You can see there, I was a lot heavier than 117 kilos back then. You can see how serious he is, how he's helping his old man out the water. And it's not the first time he's helped me. I was based in Indonesia for 5 years, and while I was there, I adopted Michael. I went through all the rigmarole. I went through a yayasan, which is a foundation over there, so that I could actually bring home this little boy. When I brought Michael home from the orphanage, he was literally as long as my forearm. That's how tiny he was. 17 years later, he's this big. And his story over there is quite fascinating. I mean, not only do you have to visit him every day for 3 weeks before you can bring him home as a foster parent, but during those 3 weeks, Suharto decided to shoot some university students, so we had riots and people being hacked to death in the streets. And from where I lived and where the orphanage was that I had to visit every day was directly across the other side of Jakarta. Jakarta's the same size as Sydney with the population of Australia living in it, just to put it in context. So I did that for 3 weeks. Then we got to bring him home, where I was a foster parent for 6 months. And then I got to go and stand in court and get grilled in an unair-conditioned Indonesian court by 4 Indonesian judges in rapid-fire Bahasa Indonesia for 3 hours on what I was going to do with this Indonesian kid before they actually granted me the right to be his adoptive parent with my ex-wife. But that was only just the beginning of it, because then the Australian Embassy stepped in. The Australian Embassy are absolutely fantastic people to deal with when you're overseas. You know, I've got this little guy who is literally 7 months old. He's still a little meat log that's cute and gurgles and does all the other stuff that kids do. I have to take him to this clinic the Australian Embassy's told me about for him to get blood tested to make sure that we're not bringing a child into Australia that's going to cost the taxpayers money. So I'm in this room with this little kid, there's 2 nurses, and there's an Indonesian doctor who can't find a vein in Michael's arm. Michael's screaming. Now, Michael knows me by now. He's been around for 6 months. He's looking at me like, Dad, do something. So I asked politely in English and in Bahasa Indonesia, please be gentle. This is my son. The doctor effectively told me to F off in Indonesian and English and jab my son. Michael screamed. I broke his jaw. The next doctor was much, much more gentle, I have to tell you. And the interesting thing was I kept waiting for the police to turn up, which was okay, because if you work in Indonesia, I had a couple of generals I was friendly with, so my general's bigger than your police inspector. That's what you pay over there. But nothing ever happened. But I tell you that to show you the sort of bonding that Michael and I have had, we went through. So we came back to Australia in 2000, in time for my then 12-year-old marriage to basically come asunder in spectacular fashion. So the time you see Michael here is the time where I'm going through a horrendous divorce. I've met my 3rd and final wife, who I've repartnered with, and we're a Brady bunch. She's got 3 kids she's brought in. I've got Michael part-time. We're trying to do that. I'm trying to make Camera House a franchise instead of just a buying group. I've got divorce lawyers on my back all the time. I've got the family law court. And if you're a male going through a divorce with a child involved, the family law court is not your friend, let me tell you. They put a lot of pressure on it. Child support's not your friend either, but we'll leave them for another time. I was literally on a treadmill. I was trying to create a new relationship. I was trying to build a much better life for my new family. I was trying to do the right thing by my ex-wife, but most importantly, I was trying to do the right thing by my son. So I'd have Michael every second weekend. That's if I didn't drive round to pick him up and find that my ex-wife decided to go to Sydney for the weekend. It was mine to have him. So one day I've got him, he's there Friday afternoon. Fantastic surprise. Lynn, my wife's picked him up. So I'm sitting outside like I do. What was happening was I was drinking too much. I was smoking too much. Now, I never smoked till I got to university. When I went to university, they used to give us a carton of bright white cigarettes, brandless. And they'd pay us $40 to smoke that carton and fill in a survey. Now, when you're on what in those days was called TEAS, Tertiary Education Assistance Scheme, which was basically how to starve slowly while you're learning to teach people, they used to give us that. So that's when I started smoking. And then I stopped. And I started again. And then I stopped for 3 years. And then I started again. Back and forth. That code was playing in my head. It's really hard to stop. So at this time in my life, I was smoking a pipe. The habit I'd created was I'd come home from work, I'd go through all the ritual of putting a pipe together, I'd get a glass of scotch, I'd sit down, I'd relax and feel better. And when I finished the pipe, I'd then have the first of 5 or 6 cigarillos. So this Friday afternoon, I'm at home, I'm stressed, I'm really not coping very well. My health's going down. You saw the belly. The belly's bigger than this. I can't walk up a flight of stairs without panting and breathing really tough. And I get this tap on my shoulder. There's my son. And he's got a piece of paper in one hand and he's got a pen in the other. And he said, "Dad, I want you to read this and I want you to sign this and I want you to keep your word." This is what he gave me. From this moment, you don't smoke ever again for he said it was supposed to be 100 million years. 100 million years. Sign me, all right? It's an everlasting contract. P.S. Only on special occasions when Michael says so. My son was barely 6 years old and he did that himself. I asked him why. He said, "Dad, I don't want you to die." I was smoking a cigarillo at the time. I stubbed it out. I haven't smoked since. Now, anyone in this room, anyone here a smoker, current ex-smoker? Okay, I need to tell you that it is impossible to smoke and be intelligent at the same time. But you know how tough it is to give up. But I literally read that, stubbed it out. A couple of times I had cravings and all I had to do was think about this. And the look in his face, he said, "Dad, I don't want you to die." So that entire code that was running in my head about when you're stressed, you smoke and you drink hard and all that sort of stuff, what happened then? The code was broken. It was completely disrupted by a 6-year-old kid with a lousy scrap of paper, which I've got to tell you is one of the most important possessions I have, is that piece of paper. But what happened from that was it got me thinking about these things that run in our heads, how we keep reacting, how we behave in certain ways because we're expected to behave in a certain way. Or we do things because that's the way they do it on TV, or there's this code that runs in our head about expectations of actions and behaviour and how we're supposed to look. Yet a 6-year-old kid with a piece of paper can break it. Seen the movie Groundhog Day? Where you turn up and you do the same thing day after day. This is a shot of the actual clock from Groundhog Day. Now, I didn't break the code, I didn't discover the clarity code immediately. But what I did find was that most people live a life where they get up and they go through the same thing time and time again. They're either hoping that at age 65 they can retire and do all the good things, in which case you face the chance of what's happened with my mother-in-law, where apart from breast cancer and a double mastectomy, and she survived, and she's only got one lung and she's 86 years old, and for her 85th birthday she was 3 o'clock in the morning drinking champagne doing the can for Christ's sake. Right? But her partner, her husband, has just been diagnosed with stage 3 Alzheimer's. So they've both worked their guts out all their lives, really hard, lost money, got it back again. Now they want to enjoy their retirement. She's gone through breast cancer, gets through that, and he's got stage 3 Alzheimer's. He took her shopping the other week and drove home without her because he forgot she was in the car. The other day he rang up home and said, "I don't know where I am." It's the same shopping centre he's been going to buy groceries from for the last 16 years. And at other times he can remember exactly where things are. Everyone forgets where you put your car keys. Alzheimer's is when you forget that you own a car. So what I'm trying to get across here is if you're living that life of quiet desperation where you're going through the same thing, hoping it's going to get better, chances are it won't. So I started thinking a lot about that after Mike did that piece of paper for me. And I decided I need to become my own ghost in the machine. All those codes running in my head, all that sort of software that was running in my head, all those things that were happening that were making me be unhappy. I mean, look, I'm a really, really good executive. For 30 years I've been paid top dollar, gone around the world. I've never missed a budget in my life, hand on heart. Never, in 30 plus years. But geez, I wasn't enjoying myself. After I was becoming a ghost of my own machine, I started looking at what people were doing. I came up with this framework. The overall part, there's 3 parts. There's control, there's command, and there's create. You need to have control of your circumstances, command of your resources, and you need to be able to create your larger life. Rainbows and unicorns. Isn't that what happens? They tell you, you find your passion and you'll never have a job again. Isn't that fantastic? Wow. I've got a friend, he loves guitars. He's been playing guitar since he was 12. He's got a Fender Stratocaster, he's got this, he's got that. He's 47 years old and he's a shit guitarist. But his passion is playing guitar. Do you think he lives a good life trying to play guitar? No, he's not. He's actually also a doctor. Thank God, that pays the bills. All right? He's a better doctor than he's a guitarist, let me tell you. I've got another friend who's in the top 7 people in the world who write security code for government agencies. He's a brilliant, brilliant coder. But his passion is, wait for it, he likes to go and find the latest TV series on DVD, sit down at home, order Pizza Hut and drink beer. That's his passion. You talk to him about drinking beer, pizza and binge watching West Wing for the 7th time, he lights up the whole room. You talk to him about writing code, he goes, yeah. So understand this whole thing about find your passion, never work again, only works if your passion is something that people are willing to pay you for. Otherwise it's this. Here's the secret. Understand what your passion is and try and build your life around it. So my friend the doctor, he goes off and does guitar camps and goes and watches things like that, but he's built his competency that people will pay him for into something that supports his passion, but he's not pretending to try and live off it. Truth bomb. You can do anything, you just can't do everything. Here's the greatest lie in the world. This was actually created by an American consulting firm. Work-life balance. Bullshit, no such thing. Work-life balance, no, there's only life and where you decide to spend your energy. That's a code you need to break. So, how do you get clear? There are 12 steps to this which I'm going to go through quickly because all this is available on the website if you need it. First thing is you need an intersection. Steve Jobs had an intersection. His intersection was art and technology. Mine is learning and strategy. And you need to find your why, your passion, your purpose. And if you're able to take your guitar playing and get people to pay you for it, fantastic. If you're not, then you need to be a doctor and have something good enough to support you at it. You need to accept that you have to change. Einstein never said if you keep, the definition of insanity is you keep doing the same thing all the time, you expect it. Einstein never said that. That first appeared in 1981 in a drug booklet in Chicago, I think it was. You need to apply what I call the Kipling lens. That's who, what, why, when, where and how. They're the questions you need to ask for every change you want to make in your life. Who's it affecting? How am I doing? Where am I going? Establish where you are right now. What do you like? What don't you like? What are you happy about? What you're unhappy about? Are you doing things you want to do? Are your family getting what they want to do? Then you need to choose your destination. Where do you want to be? And there's questions to ask about that. Then you need to measure the divide. There is a difference between where you are now and where you want to be. Then you need to identify your skills, because if you're going to close that divide, if you're going to bridge that gap, you need skills. And you won't have all those skills. So then you need to decide where you can get the other resources to help you get through. Then you need to plan your path. And it's not a straight path to get from here to where you want to, because you've got to change. Change is scary. Then you've got to take action. People will tell you you've got to take massive action. The best action to achieve goals comes from skills. Skills come from practice. Practice comes from habits. Good habits come from micro habits. Remember, I said you have to change. The best way to change is to start small. After I brush my teeth, I will floss them. Is a small change, but it saves you. Oh, there's that traffic light. I will no longer light up a cigarette, therefore I'm healthier. Rewards, cues. You start small. The trick to changing things is actually not to do a huge change, because everyone fails at New Year's Eve and New Year's Day resolutions. It's to do a small thing. A friend of mine decided he wanted to do 100 push-ups. You started by doing 1. because he couldn't fail. And the next day he did 2. And then when he hit 15, I think was the one, he stayed at 15 so he could do 16, do 17. So if you're going to change, you need to pick things you can do consistently that you won't fail at. Anthony Robbins, we are what we consistently do. So if you want to get from here to there and bridge the gap and live a larger life, you need to change, you need to create new habits, you need to be doing things consistently. Then you review, you reset, and you act again. Because if you don't review, you'll smash. You can't control everything, but there are some things you can control. Here's a question if you're stuck on how do I change? Start off that question. Before I die, I want to, and answer it, and then figure out how you're going to do it. The difference between who you are and who you want to be is what you do. It's as simple as that. We all can make a choice. You come to that still point that people like, the previous speakers came to. They came to that still point and they changed. So, crack the code. Get clear on where it is you want to go to. Follow your own path. Play your own music. Use your own magic. Create your larger life. Because I'll never see you coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Geoff Hetherington. I'm called the Clarity CEO. Thank you.